Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for October 8th to 14th. This week I read 3 books, I watched 2 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 1 book. I'm back from BookNet Fest, and while I was away at it, my roommate actually rearranged the apartment, so this is obviously a little bit different than it's been before. I now have a bookcase that's behind this couch. I still have to move the furniture around every time I film everything, but I like the setup as a whole. It looks really good in here. He did a really good job of moving all of my books. None of them are on the floor anymore, which is really important, so I'm really digging my new apartment setup, even though, you know, it's little, so it's not like you can move many things many places, but I really like how it's set up now. Also, fall came early in the Pacific Northwest, so this is the kind of lighting that we have to deal with now for the next 6 months. I should really buy a ring light, but I don't have that much money, so we'll see how this goes. The first book I finished this week was Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray. This is the second in the Diviner series, and I'm reading it for the Diviners read-along. I missed the live show this week, which was really sad, but I really enjoyed reading this book. Since it is the second in the series, there's not too much I can talk about in terms of plot, but what I can say is this continues to be nice and creepy, which is totally my vibe. I love that more people with powers are being discussed and brought into the plot, and what that means for what's going on in this specific book. I love that relationships were strengthening and developing and all of the things. I'm really enjoying this series. I'm really excited to get into the next one. I really hope that my library has the e-audiobook for it though, because it took me longer to read it as a ebook because it's like 600 pages and it's just so much easier if I can just listen to that narrator do these excellent voices, which I was definitely hearing in my head while I was reading the ebook. So I still had the voices, but it's nicer if somebody can just tell me the story while I'm on the bus to work. The second book I finished this week was Aquaporin Cove by Katie O'Neill. This was so precious. I actually made a whole event of reading this book. This was the book I read in my bathtub on Wednesday because I read a book in my bathtub every Wednesday. Then I also had a mermaid-themed bath bomb as well as an aqua-themed beer, and I just love doing baths where everything kind of fits together. This book is about a little girl and her father who go to visit her aunt who lives by the ocean, and there was recently a storm that did a lot of property damage, so they're there to help clean up the town. It gets magical and beautiful from there. The art is the cutest thing in the world, and now I have holds on everything that we have from Katie O'Neill at the library because I need to read everything else. You might remember that this is one of the books that Jean sent me when we did a haul swap. I also received the 3rd book in the mail finally, and I will input some clips of me unboxing that I did on my Instagram at the end of this video for those who are curious as to what the 3rd book was. The final book I read with my eyeballs was The Right Swipe. This was actually the pick for the Dragons and Tea book club, I want to say last month, but I couldn't get to it because I couldn't get it from the library in time. This is a second chance romance between an app developer and a former football player. The thing that I like about romance is it doesn't try to pretend that it doesn't rely on tropes. You can go into it knowing what kind of romance it's going to be. You know it's going to end happily because that is the definition of a romance. But what really fills in the plot are the characters and what they discuss and what's important to them. And I felt that this book had very solid protagonists. Rhiannon is a workaholic whose best friend gave her the seed money for the company after she left a similar company because her boss/ex-boyfriend was harassing her. Because of all that, she has trust issues and she just really wants to succeed so she can prove herself better than this guy. Samson is an ex-football player who walked off the team because he didn't like how the league was handling people with sports injuries, specifically concussion injuries, because his uncle and his father also were football players and also died fairly young because of their injuries. For me to really enjoy a romance, I need a lot of character development, I need a lot of plot, and then I can get into the kind of the smutty stuff. If it's just straight up smut, it's not something that I particularly enjoy reading. And if that's not a reflection of me being demisexual, I don't know what is. On the recommendations of my friends who are doing the Latinx readathon, they recommended the TV show Pose, so I watched the first 4 episodes and I am really enjoying it. I don't know why there's been this resurgence of like things set in 1989 New York that are queer, but I'm here for it. Pose is all about the drag ball scene in 1989 New York. The cast is mostly people of color, and then when we do have white people show up, I just am kind of annoyed by them. Those particular characters are just not very good people. I love the extravagance, the elegance, the rivalries, the talking about different things to do with body and what is accepted and what isn't, and people just wanting to be loved and thinking they have to change to acquire that. Next, because I'm back in town, we watched a few more episodes of Fear the Walking Dead. We're still in the 4th season. I'm still upset about that death that I talked about the last time I talked about this show. It seems like there's been another death that we just didn't know about until now, although we didn't see that person die on screen, so I'm still holding on to hope that they're not actually dead. Because if they are, we're down to one original character from the first episode, and that's weird. But I know there's at least one other season after this, and it'll be interesting to see if it meshes up with The Walking Dead, because there are crossover characters in this season from The Walking Dead. The movie I watched this week was It, Chapter 2, which I watched on Friday the 13th because that's funny. I don't usually go to the theaters on Fridays, let alone Friday the 13th, because I know they're going to be packed, but it was actually a lot of fun. I went with a partner. He watched not the screen for the most of the time because he's a very jumpy human, but he knows how horror movies work, so he didn't have to see the scariest of things, and he was happy about that. This morning while I was scrolling Twitter, I did see somebody who was upset that there weren't certain trigger warnings, so I'm gonna go through some of them for this. There's a whole lot of homophobia, both verbal and physically violent. Also trigger warnings for suicide and domestic abuse. I also believe there were strobe lights at some point, which I know is triggering for some people. As I've previously mentioned, the 1990 version of this movie was my favorite movie when I was 4 years old because I'm weird. And then I didn't get around to actually reading the book until about 10 years ago, and I haven't revisited it since, but it seemed to be a fairly good adaptation of what the original work was. Unless I completely missed it when I read the book, they changed the sexualities of one of the characters, which I found interesting considering they still kept in all of the homophobia, which they didn't really need to do. Especially because this is set 30 years later than it would have been set back when the book was originally written. I just really didn't need that amount of homophobia in something that is set in 2016. I know it still happens, but I didn't need it. All that being said, I thought the casting was great. There are a lot of great one-liners that had the audience laughing, which I love when you can have an audience laugh and then an audience scream within a very short amount of time. The way it was shot was also excellent. It had a plot to it, which is not something I can say for some other horror movies. Yes, elements of the book and therefore the movie are trash, but as just a horror movie, it is an entertaining time and I had fun going to it in theater. On to the book I listened to this week. I listened to A Spark of Light by Jodi Picoult. I actually saw her talking about this book sometime last year. I won a ticket to the event, just very last minute, but didn't have a copy of the book. So it was interesting to hear her talk about the book, and then I knew that I would eventually get around to reading it from the library, which is what I did. This is a book that is very much centered around abortion, especially in the southern United States. And this book is told in an interesting format because we started at about 5 o'clock on the day that this takes place, and then we go back to 4 o'clock and 3 o'clock and 2 o'clock. The majority of the book takes place in an abortion clinic where someone with a gun is keeping people captive. There is a negotiator outside trying to bring a peaceful resolution, but his daughter is also in the abortion clinic. Because of the way that this book is formatted, we really get to know every single one of these characters and all of their motivations for being where they are. And we see the debate from so many different points of view. In the author's note at the end, there's also a lot of statistics about abortions and the violence surrounding abortion clinics. And the author knows that this book isn't going to bring a resolution to the debate. This debate will probably always be ongoing. That being said, this book really humanized people on both sides of the debate. If it seems like subject matter that you can handle, I highly suggest picking it up. Before I go, I'm just going to insert the Instagram stories clips of opening the 3rd book that Jean sent me because I know that some of you aren't on Instagram, so I just wanted to talk about it in both places because that's what you guys indicated when I asked what I should do. So a while back I did a books haul swap with my friend Jean, and only 2 of the 3 books had shown up by the time I put the video out, but the 3rd book has shown up, so I'm going to open it now and see what it is. I think the only way that I'm going to make this easy is hold it down with my knee. Okay, how do people do this? We can do it, we can do it. And... ooh! I'm pretty sure that I remember Jean reading this and absolutely loving it, and then I tried to see if my library had it, and it didn't. So now I'm excited that I can read it, because I now have access to it. Thank you, Jean. I remember when Jean talked about this book, stopping the video, going to my library website, seeing if they had it, and being bummed that they didn't, so I'm very glad that she sent me this copy. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!